Hello, and welcome to today's European SharePoint, Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Laura, and I'm delighted to be joined by Marijn Somers, MVP from Mind 365 coach in Belgium, who will present the topic, Wow Your Coworkers with Awesome Looking Lists, Conditional Formatting in SharePoint. Remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is #ESPC23. Don't forget to check out the Resource Centre. This is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. Simply visit sharepointeurope.com and click the Content tab at the top. Continue your learning by joining us for our next webinar, Data Governance with Microsoft Purview, which takes place on Thursday, February 16th from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. CET. For full details, please check out sharepointeurope.com/register for webinars. Last November, over 2,000 SharePoint, Office 365 and Azure professionals joined us in Copenhagen for ESPC 22. We now have an amazing showreel video full of ESPC 22 highlights. Visit sharepointeurope.com to watch this brief recap of all the learning, development, networking, and fun that was had over this amazing 4-day event. The European Power Platform Conference 2023 is coming to Dublin. Join us from the 20th to the 22nd of June this year to power up your knowledge and connections. Book now at sharepointeurope.com/European Power Platform Conference and use the code EPPC23 at checkout to get 30% off. The ESPC 23 call for speakers is now officially open. Be part of something truly special. Speak and engage with leading experts, IT professionals, developers, and business decision makers at ESPC 23. Europe's premier Microsoft 365 and Azure conference. This is your chance to take a leading role within the conference and the community, sharing your in-depth knowledge, passion, and experience with your peers, in turn helping empower the Microsoft 365 and Azure community to professional success. Please visit sharepointeurope.com/submit-speak-ESPC to find out more. After the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you might have into the questions window. Questions will be selected and answered throughout the presentation and at the end of the presentation, should you wish to ask any questions towards the end. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Centre, where you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to our webinar presenter today, Marijn. Hello, Marijn.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Brilliant. All right, so let me also share my screen. So do you now see my SharePoint screen?
Yeah, we can see your SharePoint screen.
Formatting demo, yes, okay, good. Nice, nice, nice. All right, let's get started. There we go. How to wow your co-workers with awesome looking lists. That's the idea of this session. That's the session that I presented a few months ago in Copenhagen. The problem was we had a really small room and not everyone could fit in. So that's why the people from ESPC asked me if I could redeliver this as a webinar so that people that weren't attending the conference or people that couldn't get in could still see all the demos and all the stuff that we have. So I have over 10 demos for you, so let's jump in. The idea of this session is that we would go from this blank vanilla list to something that looks more nice, with more colors so that we can add more intelligence into our data. So we want to go here, or we might even want to create a solution that does something like this photo library where you can do likes and stuff like that. So that's our goal. So a little bit about me. My name is Marijn. I'm from Belgium. I've got over 16 years of dealing with SharePoint. Of course, the last few years, more of Microsoft 365. I've been an MVP for over 3 years, and my main job is to deliver productivity coaching. So that's what I do. If you've heard of me, it is probably because of the podcast that I do with this fine young gentleman as well, called Steve Dolby. So we have this podcast called Office 365 Distilled, where we talk about user adoption, where we talk about governance, where we talk about Microsoft 365 from a business standpoint, and we always end with a whiskey tasting. So that's kind of doing the fun things for us as well. So that's why I also call myself a spirit guide, because I just drink a lot of whiskey. Fun fact, I'm also a licensed watchmaker, and I love long walks to the bar, obviously. All right, let's get into what we want to do today, because we've got a ton of things that I want to show you. So let's first look at the past. How did it used to work with older versions of SharePoint, and why was that not a really good solution? So then we can take a look at what is available out of the box, and then we can dive into a little bit of code. So don't worry, you don't have to be a developer, you don't have to know anything about code to follow this session. So if you don't know anything about JSON or JavaScript or HTML, it doesn't matter, just follow along and enjoy the ride. So as I said, I've got over 10 demos that I'm gonna give you, and I will also end with a bunch of people that you can follow on Twitter or online, and a few places that you can go to learn more about all these solutions. So, of course, before we start this session, with all the knowledge that you will gain, you know that there will be great responsibility. So please use these things wisely in your organization. I know that I've screwed up a few times in the past while I was trying to deliver a really cool solution that had some behind the scenes repercussions. So please enjoy this knowledge responsibly, let's say. All right, so takeaways, you will learn what SharePoint can do by default to deliver awesome looking lists and libraries. But I will also show you how to go beyond the defaults. I will show you what you can do with column formatting and view formatting, and you've got just like why you shouldn't have spaces in your column names. And maybe I'll tell you the story that fries really come from Belgium instead of France, but we'll see if we still have time for that story. All right, so where are we coming from? So I've been doing this for a long time, so I know where we're coming from, and please be aware that there might be some graphic content if you're also in the game as long as I have been in the game. So be warned for the next slide. Hold on to your chair. SharePoint 2003. I don't know if you were there in SharePoint 2003. I was there. And what we had to do then to make something look good is to build HTML in front page. Microsoft front page was a thing back then, and we had to build our own full HTML to make something look amazing. Then we went to SharePoint 2007 and SharePoint 2010, and there we had SharePoint Designer. And I'm still so sad that we don't have SharePoint Designer anymore, because opposite to contrary belief, I really thought that was a really good product. And I loved working with SharePoint Designer. And what we could do in SharePoint Designer was we could take our page with our list, and we could change that into something else. And then if we could take that different kind of model, we could apply some rules to it, saying that if this is 5 or if this is less than 10, you should apply color code to it. And that worked pretty good, actually. Now, in SharePoint 2013, things got a little different. So one of the thing that I did for so many customers was to use a JavaScript that was built by the people behind Path to SharePoint. And I don't know if you've ever used that before, but that was a pretty cumbersome solution. So what you had to do is you had to add this JavaScript to the page, and as an extra web part, like a content web part on the page of the list you were trying to show. And then you could use a calculated column to apply a specific Excel-like formula that would deliver some HTML, and that HTML would be rendered by the JavaScript to make it do something. So for example, in this case, show green, orange, or red, or purple instead of just the basic stuff that you would have. You know. Now, why is that no longer a good solution? Because, well, we don't have SharePoint Designer anymore. SharePoint Designer was killed for working in Microsoft 365. We can't put HTML and JavaScript on a page anymore, on the modern pages. Microsoft turned that off because they're managing the whole system for thousands and millions of customers. So we can't be allowed to run JavaScript on there, because that could make the data centers unreliable. I once brought down a whole tenant, well, not a tenant, but our on-premises server, our SharePoint server, by creating a JavaScript. So I created a JavaScript that would create a little image carousel that would show images. The problem was that it was pointing to an empty picture library, so it was trying to get those pictures all the time. And the server thought it was a DDoS attack because it was getting so many requests, and the server just went down. So it's kind of a good thing that we are not allowed to write any HTML or JavaScript anymore. So I think that's a good thing. It was also quite difficult in the past if we had to do this. So you had to know HTML code and stuff like that. And there was not really a good way to roll it out. So for example, with the Path to SharePoint solution, you had to add that to every page, to every view that you wanted this solution to work. So that was just a lot of work, and so not really a good way to roll it out to your whole environment. So those things have changed. How does it work now? Well, there are a bunch of things that you can do from the user interface, and if that user interface is not enough, you can always add your own JSON script. And JSON is a very readable, not that difficult script language. So it's JavaScript object notation. And if you have a basic understanding of what HTML code looks like, you can go very far with JSON code. So it's not that difficult, and the JSON is the underlying layer of formatting your list or your library. So you have two major options if we are looking at lists and libraries and the formatting. On the one hand, we could format just a column, so just one metadata field. We could add some code to it or some colors to it. The other option that we have is view formatting, and view formatting that will really change every row. So you could say, for example, this row, if this condition is met, then this row should look in a different way, or it could even look totally different, just not like a list. So you can also give it a full makeover. So for example, this right example, this feedback list, that's the same list as this one, but just with a little makeup applied to it. So you can make it, you can give it a full makeover. You've got calendar view, board view, and you could even change the command bar that you have on top of your list or library. So lots of really cool things that you can do. Yeah. So, and of course, yes, we are going to cover all these things. So let's start with column formatting, how to define the look of one specific metadata field. And let's take a look at what is possible out of the box. So let me go to my SharePoint, and I will go to a list that is called my Christmas present list. So these are a list of things that people want and that they have on the Christmas list. So I've got a title, I've got a status, I've got a value, how much these things cost, if they were on the list, yes or no. So the things that I could do here, for example, is if I click on the title of my status, I can go into my column settings, format this column. And here I've got a number of formatting options. And the one that we use by default is the choice pills. And these will give all my different values a specific color. So I can just save that and be done with it. Yeah. So that's a very default thing if you have a choice field. My value, for example, that's a number field. So if I go to my value, I will see different options. And one of the options that I really like is the data bars, because these data bars, they really give me a visual representation of the value. And that's kind of what we're doing this for. The goal of applying these formatting things is to, yeah, definitely make it less boring, make it look a little nicer, make it pop out a little bit. But also we want to make our data more understandable. And if we apply some visual representation to our data, it immediately shows us like these are the cheapest things and these are our more expensive things. Yeah. So applying some visual representation is just a nicer way of working with this. Yeah. So we've got our pills, we've got data bars. What else could we do out of the box with column formatting? We could also apply rules. So for example, my title, I wanna, oops, I can just go from here. So I wanna apply some rules to my title. So what I could do is I can create some rules here. And what I could do, for example, is I could say, if the value is less than 20, let's say, less than 50, I want to show my list item in red because those are expensive things. Yeah. So you already see immediately what the result is. So if the value of my item is less than 50, show it in red, so I have a visual representation of these things are expensive, and I might need to take a look at that. Yeah. So just in a few minutes, we already have our default list that was just blank vanilla already looking a lot more like a proper solution that we can take a look at just in one look and immediately derive value out of it. Yeah. So that's the whole goal of this formatting. So those are the things that you can do by default with column formatting. So we've got our built-in choice pills, we've got our rules, we've got our data bars, but what if we go advanced? What if we go one step beyond what is possible out of the box? Then we enter the JSON territory, yeah? And this is a typical JSON formula. And I will go with you through this, so it's not that difficult. So what this code says or does is it says I've got an element type, so I'm going to deliver you something, and that will be in a specific HTML field. So that could be an image, could be a hyperlink, could be a div. Div is, if you don't know anything about HTML code, a div is probably the most used HTML element in the world. It's just a piece of content that you can put in there. So we are going to give you, or the JSON code, the formatting code, is going to deliver to your SharePoint page a div element. And that div element will have a certain style. So the background color of that div element will be red, and the text color will be white. And this is typical CSS. This is typical HTML, CSS code. There are so many tools online that you can use to create this, to write this. I use the W3 Schools a lot to create my style, and then I can just copy paste that in here. So this is the style that we're applying to our element. And then the last part is the txt content. That is actually what are we going to show in this div element, and in this case I'm going to display the current field. So it's not that difficult. And if we take this code and so here I've got that code, I can just copy this and I can go into my title field, for example, into my formatting settings. And here where I created my rules on the bottom, I've got my advanced mode. So here you will see the code that the system created by itself when I applied that rule. So if I scroll down, you see there's a lot of code. It's not the most optimal code either. So here you can see your operands. So if this was less than 50, that's how the system behind it creates it. But if I just replace that code with the code that I just created, and if I go to preview, you will see that this will now become a red block with white text, and the text will be the same text that is on the field. So if I do preview, that's what actually happens. So that is what my code does. Gives a div element, background red, color white, and it will show the current field. So I can just save that. So that's the easiest way of applying that JSON code, and that's the default way of doing this. So if you look at the JSON language, you will always see pairs. So if I go back to my code, for example, you will see I've got an element type, and that's this value. I've got a background color, that's this value. I've got this, that is that. So everything is always in pairs. So you have a name for a thing and you have a value. And that value, that will correspond with HTML code. And you can have children in there as well. So you can create a div with a span, with another div, with another thing in behind it. So you can create really complex code. So let's go over these things once more. So we've got an element type, and that element type could be a div or a span or a link, which is an A, or an image or something else. And we will look at some of these items in the next demo. I can apply some styling to it. So I could say, for example, if my current field is less than 40, make something black or white. Or I can apply some classes to it, because everything in SharePoint has built-in classes. So for example, the theme that you apply to a SharePoint site, that will give you some certain classes. So you can actually work with your primary color or your secondary color depending on the theme. So if you have a site with a red theme, things will look red in your list. But if you decide to change your red site to a green site, all the content in your list will change to green. Yeah, so that is something that you can do, and that's really cool as well. And then the last thing is you have your TXT content. So that specifies what the text is that you're gonna show in your column. Fun thing, you don't have to show any text if you don't want to. So this could be a string or an expression. So this could be the current field. This could be the name of another field that you want to show in there. But it could also be some kind of code where you say last week. So the last modified, for example, that you have in SharePoint by default, that's a perfect example where it says yesterday or last week or last month. That's something that you can do as well with an expression. There are also some more complex fields that you have in SharePoint, like for example, a people field or a lookup field. These are the ways how you can play around with that as well. And also a warning, the JSON is case sensitive. So capital letters and small letters is very important. And also if you're playing around with an older list, take into account that these lists might have spaces in the name. So modern lists, they don't create spaces by default anymore. They just put all the words next to each other. But older lists still might have spaces in the name. For example, a due date. And then you have to take into account that you might need to add the HTML relevant code for a space. Yeah. So if you're trying to do this on a really old list and you're not getting the right results, these two rules might definitely help you to debug that, like a due date with spaces or case sensitivity. Yeah. All right, cool. So I've shown you a first demo that showed you a div element. Now let's do something else that could also make this look a little more fancy. So for this, I am going to change my status field, and I'm going to apply a few icons to it. So here in my code, I can actually say, if my current field is requested, so if my status is requested, I want to show an emoji, a smiling emoji. If it's wrapped, then I want to show a neutral emoji, or if it's and otherwise I will show a disappointed emoji. Yeah. So these are things that you can do as well. Let me just go into my status field here, go into advanced mode and get rid of this code and apply this code here. And let's do a preview. And here you will immediately see the result. So in this way, I can also show my status in a much brighter way, and we can apply some smileys here as well if you want. Yeah. My next demo that I want to show you is that it doesn't always have to be a div element. It could also be something else. So for example, it could be an SVG. An SVG is a drawing that you could have. So let's take a look at this. So for this one, and this code is getting a little longer, it's getting a little more difficult, but let me just grab that here, and let me, for example, change this one. This is the checkbox to see if it is on the list, yes or no. And I can take that, go into advanced mode, and I can actually have this as a preview. And here you can actually see, yes, it was on the list, or no, it was not on the list. So if it's checked, we will see the round bar. If it's not checked, I will not see the round bar. Yeah. So this way, this demo is just to show you that it doesn't have to be a div element. It could also be something else. So in this case, I'm having I'm not giving an element type as a div, but in this case, it's a path that is in an SVG element, for example. Yeah.
Sorry, Marijn.
Yes.
There's just a question in here. So someone's asking, is there a list of possible images for formatting columns, and can we upload our own?
A list of images. I'm not sure what you mean, because in this case, this is all just code. So this circle with the checkbox, it's not an image. It's actually just code that says draw a circle and put something in it. So this is all done by that SVG. So that is just how that works. So there are no images involved in this. Now, that said, you can create a new column that is an image column, or to show some kind of image on it. We will take a look at that in, I think, one of the last demos. So if you bear with me for just a little more, we can look at that later on.
Brilliant, thanks, Marijn.
So what about other views? I could also take, for example, a board view or a calendar view. There are a few things that you can do there as well. So for example, I've got my holiday party list with some dates and some parties, and I've got a craziness level to see how crazy this party could get. Now, if I want to create a calendar view, for example, I could do that, and it would take these party dates into account. But what I want to do is I want to show a calendar that shows all the parties, but I want to apply a color code depending on the craziness level. Yeah. So what I can do is I can create a new view here, and I can say I want a calendar view. Let's call that calendar. And what would be the start date on my calendar? Why doesn't it doesn't want to use my date? Why not? Let's try it again. Okay, let's do a refresh of the page. Let's try once more. There we go, party date, good. So I've got my calendar, and I want to show my dates on there. Yeah. So here we've got our dates. We've got a secret party, party in Vegas, party at my parents' place. And now I want to apply that color coding to it. So I could go into my rules, and here I could say I want to add a rule, and I want to show this in a different color if the partiness level is very crazy. So I can go in here, and the only thing I see here is the date and the title. So I don't see my party craziness level column. And that is because this calendar view doesn't work right yet. So it does work, but you just have to go either into advanced mode and add the calendar there, or there's a little workaround that I think is a little easier. If I go into my list settings and I go into my calendar view old school, because I'm an old school guy, I can actually go in here and I need to add this column to my view. And if I now click on OK, now we're here. Let me do a refresh again. Now I can go into format my current view, manage rules, add rule, and now you will see that my party craziness level is indeed in there. So that's also a very important takeaway. You can only play with the columns that you have in your view. Yeah, so that's very important to know if you want to do crazy things. So let's say if our party craziness level is equal to of the charts, I want to show this in red, for example, and you will immediately see that these items will turn red for that case. So you can do things in other views, so it doesn't have to be like a list view. You can also use board views, you can use calendar views and all that. So those will work, but you need a little workaround. Microsoft knows this, and they are going to give this extra capability at some point. I was hoping it would be here already, but I don't have it in my tenant yet, where you can actually show or hide columns much faster. All right, cool. One of the other things that you can do with column formatting is, so we already discussed that we can make it pretty, we can make it insightful, so that we can make it look like we can derive value out of it. A third thing that we can do is we can actually create actionable items. So for example, we could start a workflow from a button. Yeah. So what you can do is you can create a workflow in Power Automate, and you can grab the flow ID, and that flow ID, you can use that into some code. So for example, let me get out of this. I've got code right here. So what I can do is I can create an element that is a button, and that button needs to do something, and I can apply a row action to it, and it's going to execute a flow. And which flow? Well, this is the flow from my Power Automate. Yeah. So you can just grab that code from your Power Automate ID. And then I want to apply a little bit of styling to it. So I want to create a button that says buy now. And so yeah, that's the thing that I want to do. All right, so let me grab this code. Let me go back to my Christmas present list. So what I want to do for this is I want to create a new column, because I want to add this next to these things. So I want to create a calculated column so that it doesn't show up in yeah, other kind of values. So what I want to do is I want to create a calculated column. It's not on the list. By the way, if you haven't seen this yet, this is the new way of adding columns. So you can actually choose something and you will see a little bit of information around that. So I want to see all the column types, and I want to have a calculated column. Here we go. And I'll name that by it, for example. And in the formula, I'll just say, just be empty. Yeah. All right. And actually, I can put my column formatting in here already. So if I'm creating something from the advanced creation screen, I can already put my column formatting in here if I want to. So let me refresh the page. So here I've got my byte column. Let me apply the formatting here to it, and I can actually say, here we go, so preview, I want to save this. So now I've got this little button in here. Yeah. So for example, this item is requested, and I can click on the buy now button, and you will see this Power Automate flow starting, taking some time. Taking a lot of time. There we go. So I can run the flow. There we go. And this will change, this flow will just change this from requested into another value. So you will see this changing at some point. There we go. So it's changed from requested into wrapped, and it's now on the list. So that's what this workflow did. So instead of people having to click around and to create something, you can actually use these actionable buttons that you create from your formatting solution. Yeah. So very easy to do that as well. What about document libraries? Yes, we are going to cover document libraries as well. But first, how do you roll this out? So we now seen how you can apply specific code to a specific solution, to a specific thing. But what if we want to have this color coding or this intelligence applied to all the metadata fields that we have in our organization with this specific field? So what if we want to apply this to all the category fields that we have, or all the status fields that we have? So one way you could do this is from the content type hub. add formatting to the side column, and then everywhere where you use that specific side column, that will have that formatting automatically applied to it. Another way how you can do that is using PowerShell. So I'm using PowerShell all the time to create new SharePoint sites and all that. And what you could do is you could use PowerShell to actually set the value of the custom formatter. All right, so a little demo for that as well. So if I go into my site contents, I am going to run this little script, and this little script says I'm going to connect to my SharePoint environment. I'm going to create a new list called a new library that's called project documents, and I want to add a field called demo field, and that demo field I'm going to apply some custom formatting to it. So this is the actual code that we are going to apply, but instead of doing it manually, I'm just going to do it from PowerShell. Yeah. So if I go back to my site contents, you see there's no such thing as project documents. If I run this code, and this is going to run very quickly, there we go. That's all. Now, if I refresh my page, I've got my project documents. So this is a new library that was created. So this could be part of your site creation process. So if I now add a few files in here, you will see I've got my demo field with a specific value. If I edit this in grid view, this would be my color-coded things that I have here. So it is that easy to apply this. So just with this code, so with my demo field, my choice fields that I want to add, and my code that I want to apply to it. So it is that easy. By the way, there will be a link to all these scripts later on, and there will also be a link where I stole all those scripts from, because I'm not a developer. I didn't create these things. I'm just reusing them from the sample solution from Microsoft. Yeah. All right, cool. Let's hurry up and talk about view formatting. So until now, we really looked at how I could show a specific metadata field in a specific way. But what we could also do is change the way how our screen looks. And that could be, on the one hand, with something that's called an additional row class. And an additional row class, it says what it does. It adds an additional class to your row. So you will keep your default markup and your default stuff, the default thing, how it looks. It will apply something extra to it. So as an example, I've got this one. If the owner field, so I've got a document library, and I've got a metadata field that's called owner, who's the owner of this document. If that is me, add a little color to it. And this is the background color theme light. So that's what I was talking about 20 minutes ago. This is the background color that is added to my site theme. And if I change my site theme, this color will change as well. All right, so how does that work? Let me go to my documents library. So here's my documents library. I've got an owner field, and you also see that I've got some column metadata formatting applied here as well. So let me go here to this demo. So this is, I'm going to apply an additional class to my screen. If the owner is me, then put this row into the background color. So I'm just going to copy this code, and we are not going to apply this to a column. So we're not going to format this column. We are actually applying this to my view. So here I can actually say format my current view. I get kind of the same look and feel. So I can choose alternating row styles, for example. So that will give this a little more visibility, or I can add some rules if I want to, but I could also go into advanced mode and just paste my code in there and do preview. There we go. And you see that the things which have my name on it as an owner, they have an additional row class that is linked to the color of my theme. So I've got a green theme going on here, so these are in green. You also see that my column formatting is still there. So all the things that I've done on a column level, it's still here. It doesn't get wiped away. And this is an additional class that is added to this solution. Yeah? So that looks really cool. And I've done this on the level of my view. So that means if I would change into another view, for example, my status view, I don't have that here with me. So I could create different kind of rules on different kind of views to make them look the way I want. Yeah, very important. Cool. So we are running out of time. So what we could also do is, instead of this adding an additional row class, I could also create something that looks completely different, and that is the row formatter. So what the row formatter does, it says, okay, I'm going to delete all the markup, I'm going to delete everything that you have, and I'm going to let you create your own HTML by 0. Yeah. So how does that look? For that, I've got a little birthday list. So this is a list of people with birthdays. And I've got my code, and this code does a few very cool things. So it just says build my whole screen. I'm gonna look into some of the details later on. I'm going to format the current view, go into advanced mode. I'm gonna paste that in here, and let's say preview. And this is how my list looks now. Yeah. There are a few things that you need to note about this solution. For example, here I've got my titles, and I've got this selection box as well. Yeah. Now, if I apply my code, you will see in the top of the code, there we go. Oops. In the top of my code, I'm actually saying hide the selection box and hide the list headers, so hide the column titles. And if I go then into preview, you see that I don't have the column titles anymore, and I don't have my selection box anymore. Yeah. Plus, I'm just rewriting how my list should look. And this is a solution that I've been using for a lot of customers. They all want to show the birthdays of their employees into a list. So I've been using that a lot of times. Cool. So I've got 2 more demos for you. So if you bear with me just a little bit, I can show these things to you. One of the things that came out last year is also a way to deliver extra visibility on groups. So what we could do here is, I'm going to my list where I've got images as well. So this is just an image field. And I can also go into group by food type. So this is a typical list where I have items grouped by asset type. Yeah, so this is a default asset list that you find in the templates from Microsoft. And these are just my assets. And you will see here, I've got an asset type, which is a specific value. And I will also see that I've got a number of items that are in this list or in this grouping. Yeah. Now I can make this look pretty as well. So here I can go and I can add some attributes. So I could say if the field is snack, for example, I'm going to give it a color. I'm going to add an icon to it, and I can do a lot of other things as well. So if I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say format this list, I'm going to go into advanced mode, use this code. So what you will see is that this will get a color, and this will get an icon as well. So if I click on preview, you will see I now have 2 beers, 1 fries, and 1 snack. Yeah. So it looks, the grouping, the group header now looks totally different. Yeah. And that is also a very easy way to do that as well. So there are a number of things that you can add. So you can use a footer if you want. You can use the group count into your text, into your header text, to show how many items there are in there. Maybe you don't want that, maybe you do. And you can also show the display value of the group, so the name of the item that you're grouping this into. This is actually a demo that I got from April Dunham, so thank you for that. It's awesome. Now my last demo is changing the command bar. So I was listening to the Intrazone podcast, and end of November they had an amazing episode with Gaia Carini and Katie Erlandson, and they were talking about how they want to phase out the sync button in favor of the add to OneDrive button. So I thought, oh, that's really cool. I can actually apply that into my demo bar, into my command bar. So if I go back into my documents library, for example, you see that this is my command bar, and I've got my sync button here, and I've got my add shortcut to OneDrive. And to be honest, a lot of my customers are really confused by that, like when should I use what solution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my command bar. So I'm going to change the properties of my command bar. I'm going to hide my new button, and I've got my edit in grid view button, so this one, and I'm going to rename that to quick edit these documents. I've got my sync button, I'm going to hide that as well. And then I've got my integrate button, this one, and I'm going to hide that as well. So I'm just going to grab this code. I'm going to go into format current view, and I'm actually going to delete this code for my green rows. I'm just going to apply this. And when I click on preview, what you will see is the new button will disappear. Editing grid view will have a different title. Sync button will be gone, and the integrate button will be gone. So if I click on preview, 1, 2, 3, go, there you see it. So I don't have my new button anymore. Editing quick view is now quick edit these documents, and the integrate button is also gone, and the sync button is gone. Yeah. So you could also like combine all these scripts into, well, scripts, all this JSON code into one to make it really look like one big whole. Cool. All right, to wrap this up, so these are the command prompts. You can do a lot of things with it. So as a wrap up, don't fear JSON. It's not as difficult. I've been showing you a few codes very quickly, I know, but you can find all these things. I will give you the links later on. You can try these out in your own little playground or in your own site. You're not breaking anything with it. If it doesn't work, you can just get rid of it afterwards. You can use that preview feature, but please don't go overboard. I've seen some lists that look really crazy and that don't have any added value. So your column formatting should have added value to whatever it is you're trying to show. How can you roll this out or incorporate this into your organization? Create a demo site where you can show a bunch of these lists and libraries with that added value. So show those examples and maybe incorporate this into your inspiration sessions that you're doing within your organization as well. Also grab a friendly web developer, somebody that knows HTML, maybe already knows some JSON code, because you can have spectacular results. So you can have things like this in your list to make it just look like a chef's kiss, brilliant, beautiful. Yeah. So if you want to know more, these are definitely two people that I encourage you to follow. So you got Chris Kent and you got Tetsuya Kawahara. These people have been creating so many really cool samples. so many really cool online webinars for Microsoft for other people. You can just find them on YouTube and on Twitter. Definitely check those people out. And then places to go to. So you could learn how to build your own. So the first two links are learn.microsoft.com links. So they really talk about how column formatting and view formatting, how that works. The last link is the link to the sample solution, and I'm just going to show you that here. So the sample solution on adoption.microsoft.com, if you just click on Microsoft List, you will find a ton of really cool examples. Like, for example, this one is a sample code to display a QR code of a list item, or have your list look like sticky notes, for example. So there are so many really good, really cool examples. And if you click on these things, it will actually tell you what it is, how you can apply this to it, and where you can find the code that you can just copy paste into your own formatting solution. So with that, all that's left is for me to give you the link where you can find the scripts that I've used. If you really want to reuse them, you can, and I will share the link later on, or the slides will be shared, I'm sure, but we can share that as well. But really what I've done is just, I took those sample scripts from that adoption.microsoft.com site, and I tweaked them a little bit just to make it work for my own solution. So definitely use this adoption.microsoft.com sample solution gallery, and that's the best place to go to. And with that, I want to thank you for this session. If you have any questions, I'm still here, and thank you.
Thanks, Marijn, for a great presentation and a great couple of demos. So we'll get straight into answering some of the questions now. There's just a couple came in there in the last couple of minutes.
Yeah.
So as Marijn said, he will share his slides with me, and I will share the slides and the webinar recording when they become available. So the first question I have here is, someone is asking, does the flow have to reside on the site, and can any user activate the flow?
Yes, so those are things that you just have in your Power Automate. So Power Automate, the workflow solution, it's not tied to a specific site. So it's just a workflow that says, in this list, this is what you need to do. So this can run from wherever, absolutely. And who can run this flow? Well, whoever has the rights to run the flow. So most of the time you will just do this by default for everyone. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Marijn. So another question, someone's asking, how can we send the other filed values with this flow action?
How can we, sorry?
How can we send the other filed values with this flow action?
How can you add parameters to your flow action? That's a good question. I'm not a big Power Automate guru, so I don't know if that's even possible. Now, what you could do is within your Power Automate flow, you can put all the intelligence in it that you want, but I don't know how to add parameters. I'm not even sure if that's possible to do with a Power Automate. So I have to keep you in the dark on that one, sorry.
Brilliant, thanks, Marijn. So just another couple of questions here. Someone else is asking, are those changes coming from this custom HTML, CSS, JSON attributes visible in the browser F12 DevTools when anything applied by some other dev member, so I am able to identify where is the styling coming from? Quite important for reverse edge fixing.
Good question. So you can't see by default who has added any formatting to a list or to a column. So there's not really a good way to see who has done that. So yeah, you might see something in the audit log, but I haven't tested that out, to be honest. So yeah, that's a difficult one. Now, what you should do is give people that need to work on this, give them contribute rights so they can add files or add list items or change them, but not edit rights, so they can't change the list itself. So that way, if you give everyone who needs to work on this, you just give them contribute rights, they can't change the list, so that only the owners of the site can actually apply any of this formatting to the columns or to the views. So you can regulate that a little bit with your security to make sure that not everyone can just start applying some color codes to your list.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Marijn. So just we have an attendee here saying that passing parameters to a flow via the JSON formatted button is not possible.
Okay.
So I believe that's in relation to one of the previous questions.
Yeah.
Then our last question here is it possible to make something like @mention someone on multi-line text?
Ooh. Good question. I have no idea. That's a good question. I honestly have no idea. So that's something that we need to test out.
Brilliant. So that is all the questions that we have today. So just on behalf of the ESPC community, we would like to extend a huge thanks to yourself, Marijn, for taking the time today to carry out this webinar. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
So this is the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. So thanks again to everyone for joining us today. Take care and have a nice day.